we know you should.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome viewers. Today we are privileged to have with us as our guest Dr. Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad, a well-known Muslim scholar, jurist, and member of the, I believe it's the European Council for Fatwa?
The Fatwa Council of Europe.
The Fatwa Council of Europe. He will be speaking today with us about, and we'll be discussing with him, his views on the Western alliance, the Western campaign to fight ISIS, and the response of Muslim scholars to the problem of ISIS and Daesh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Shaykh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dr. Haytham, you mentioned that the West's alliance and campaign against ISIS should be one that we question, or at least our support. We should re-examine what are the intentions, what are the motives, and perhaps be less ready to give our unequivocal support. I would suggest that many people would think this is an uncharitable position, and we should accept the West's efforts to combat ISIS at face value, that it's a legitimate and positive step.
Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. See, the conflict there is not as easy as it is presented by many Western media outlets. It is not just as simple as that the West is trying to combat ISIS or try to crack on ISIS. It is more complicated than this. If we go back a little bit to the history and how ISIS was formed and what are the context in which ISIS emerged and became stronger, then we can have a better understanding of the whole scenario there. And moreover, now after the Russian intervention, especially after the Russian intervention, what is happening now is that Russia is killing maybe from the troops or the groups that fight ISIS more than it is killing from the ISIS. In fact, the civilians now, and there are many reports, okay, whether in the Independent, on the Guardian, or many even in the Foreign Policy, and many Western media outlets confirmed that the number of people who are killed by the Russian troops now, whether from the civilians or from the other groups that fight ISIS, is far bigger than the number of people killed from ISIS by the Russian troops.
With respect, Dr. Haytham,
Yes.
I think you seem to be conflating two things. Nobody is suggesting that civilians haven't been killed.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's questioning. But in addition to the many civilians that have been killed, you've brought in the Russian intervention.
Yes.
And we opened with, or the question at least initially was, the Western campaign.
Yes.
Are you not conflating? And I mean, it's almost as if you're saying that they're actually together. Isn't that, a best cynical and perhaps even conspiratorial to say that there's a joint Russian-American campaign?
See, first of all, yes, there is a Russian-American campaign, because Putin met Obama in a few months ago, and they have agreed with regards to the future of Syria. And they said that Syria has to be a secular country, and there is no room for extremes in Syria. So they have drawn the outline of the future of Syria. So they have agreed on this. And moreover, Russia wouldn't intervene in Syria if they know that the West is not agreeing on this. Now, see, whether the West wants to pull out Russia into Syria in order to maybe destroy Russia as it happened in Afghanistan, or maybe they have another aim, another agenda, this is something else. But we are talking about the foreign intervention in Syria, whether it is by Russia or by the West,
right? If we
because they just play roles.
Okay. So you've made a case for why you think perhaps potentially actually there is an unstated agreement between the West and
or
Russia.
a stated agreement, maybe.
Okay, even stated. If we step back a bit and assess the Western campaign, the Western, the American-led campaign against ISIS.
Yeah.
Why do you think we should be hesitant in supporting?
Okay. See, it is not a matter
seems
of
like a positive thing.
It is not a matter of looking it in a very simplistic way. See, if the West wants to really destroy ISIS, they could have done that long time ago. For example, now they have not, or the West have not targeted the petrol refineries that are used by, allegedly used by ISIS. Okay, the West was not really serious in attacking the control centers of ISIS. Also, we find that ISIS is using very high technology. How ISIS managed to get access to that high technology without maybe the approval of the West? There are many question marks. There are many question marks. And as I always say, that imagine if ISIS was a legitimate Sunni group that is fighting Bashar al-Assad. The West will not allow it to flourish like this. They will just finish it immediately. Okay.
Why do you say that?
Okay. Just leave this. Leave all of this, because some people might disagree, might agree, might disagree with this. Let us look at the holistic picture, the overall picture. Who is the most benefiting people out of what ISIS is doing? It is the West, because the West is intervening.
People would find that the attacks in Paris, the potential for attacks throughout the capitals of the West. This is how can this be to the benefit?
That is not necessarily related to ISIS directly, because ISIS will claim to themselves any kind of attack. This is something else. But at the end of the day, the West is able to intervene in the Middle East. The West is able now to redraw the map of Syria. The West now is able to protect its interest in the Middle East. The West now is able to put pressure against Turkey. The West now is able to put pressure against Saudi Arabia. The West is able to suck.
You've listed for us now a series of what you believe to be our foreign policy or interests of Western governments. But again, I mean, how do you think that is honestly balanced against what is definitely, unquestionably, a fundamentalist, extremist, Islamist threat in Western countries? Surely the West is seeking, to fulfill its duty to protect its citizens, and therefore is legitimately going after ISIS. It doesn't want ISIS to it doesn't want to perpetuate ISIS. They don't want to perpetuate ISIS.
But see, everything has a price, and their intervention in that area has a price, and they are balancing between the price they are paying for their intervention and for maybe securing some of their interests there, and the price that they are losing. And let us put also in mind that even in Europe, the West is achieving a lot out of ISIS. For example, they are cracking down on Muslims. They are squeezing on Muslims. The Islamophobia is being fed on this. The right wing is being fed on this.
But why?
Even as we all know, the new laws have been introduced in France, the new laws have been introduced in the UK. The war now on extremism became war on Islam.
You mentioned 2 points there, which if I could get you to elaborate on, because I think, again, some people might find that a little bit confusing. How can it be in the interest of Western governments to have a rise in far-right extremism, and also they're instituting these laws and policies which you claim are anti-Muslim or oppressing Muslims? These are only a reaction. The laws are a reaction, and the far-right groups are not something that they seek to have.
If we go back to history a little bit, and we understand the historical context about what is happening in Europe. See, Europe never expected that Islam will be well integrated, positively integrated in the West, and not only positively integrated, but flourish as it is flourishing now, whether in Britain, France, Germany, Holland, and other countries. So they need something huge in order to restrict Islam and Muslims in Europe. And they need to crack down on Islam and Muslims in Europe. So obviously they have to have a valid excuse, a strong excuse to introduce laws. Now, see, what is, for example, in Britain, Britain knows about Islam and Muslims. Let me mention this point.
Okay. Well, and then we'll move on.
Islam is not new to Britain. Britain knows Islam very well. Britain governed or ruled at one point half of the Muslim world. So they know what Islam is. Why is it now that they are calling certain practices of Islam as extremist, and they have introduced the conveyor belt that this extremism, this version of extremism, which is believing in Sharia, believing in caliphate, believing in the unification of the Ummah, etc., etc., to the level that if you believe in certain hudud, you are an extremist. And then this extremism is leading, according to the conveyor belt, is leading to terrorism. And in order to outroot terrorism, we have to outroot extremism. And what is extremism? Is the normal Islamic belief. And hence, the theory says we have to stop Muslims from holding firmly on their beliefs in order for them not to be extremists.
We need to bring you back slightly to the top and to your essay. I mean, in the essay you mention, stepping back to the actual question of ISIS, that the West failed to intervene in Syria in the pre-ISIS stage, failed to attack the Syrian regime. Surely the West didn't do that because it didn't want to embroil itself in a foreign policy, I beg your pardon, not in a foreign policy, to embroil itself in a war in the way it had done in Iraq. So that's actually a positive thing. It's only attacking ISIS because ISIS is a more genuine threat to Western interests.
Yeah, but again, the question is, what is the context in which ISIS flourished? This is the main question. And the West was observing the situation in Iraq and observing the situation in Syria, and all of a sudden, ISIS emerged. So there is a big question mark here. How all of a sudden ISIS emerged? Obviously, if we also go back to the history a little bit, we see that the West knows about what is happening to the Sunnis in Iraq. The West knows about what is happening in Syria. And the West decided not to intervene and not to create a setup whereby they can intervene except as a particular point, and that is questionable. So the whole issue is questionable, whether the emerge of ISIS, whether why the West is intervening now or not. However, Kashif, this is not a big issue. This is not a big issue. The analysis whether the West has intervened because of a particular agenda or not, this is not a big issue. The biggest issue is how we move forward and how we solve the situation there, which poses so many question marks about ISIS itself.
Right, okay. I think you've raised some interesting points, and we'll come back and explore some of the question marks surrounding ISIS in more detail in the next segment, inshallah. Dr. Haytham, returning to the point that we left you on about ISIS itself, looking at the origins of ISIS, where it comes from, and what a Muslim viewpoint should be. You mention in the article, you open with, although it's not the main thrust of your article, that Muslims have unanimously condemned ISIS. Is that really true? Is there not a significant body of support for ISIS in the Muslim world?
Yeah,
amongst
Bismillah.
Muslims?
Yeah, there might be, but it is an odd opinion. Okay, and we need to look at the legitimacy of ISIS, and this is I think it is an important point for the Muslim audience. Do we see ISIS as a legitimate body? What is the legitimacy of ISIS? What are the main criticism against ISIS? First of all, okay, let us not look at the details. Let us look at the bigger picture. Let us look at it holistically. When you see that there is a group that is claiming the truth exclusively, then you should question that. Because we all know that the Prophet ﷺ said that my ummah will never gather together on errors. Yeah? So if the vast majority of Muslims are gathering together against ISIS, which is the case now, then there is a question mark about the legitimacy
Is that the case?
of
Are there not
ISIS.
Muslim scholars in support of ISIS?
Maybe there are, but there are very, very few. Most of the Muslim scholars, and this is well known, I can list all the Muslim scholars who have condemned that, condemned what ISIS is doing. Then we should put question mark. This is one thing.
Has their condemnation been clear and unequivocal?
Of course, without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. I don't know. Even as they say, the jihadi, the so-called jihadi scholars, although I disagree with the word jihadi scholars, the likes of Abu Muḥammad al-Maqdisi and others, they have condemned what ISIS is doing, and they have even questioned the origin of ISIS and whether ISIS is, to start with, is an Islamic group. And many thinkers, especially Syrian thinkers, came up with a conclusion that ISIS is built by a cooperation of three intelligence services: the Russian intelligence service, the Syrian intelligence services, and the Israeli intelligence services, the Iranian intelligence services. The Iranian intelligence services, the Syrian intelligence services, and the Russian intelligence services.
So
and that's why we see that ISIS have committed so many missions, sent so many missions, but not against the actual Syrian regime, not against Moscow, not against the Iranian
But ISIS
regime.
defends its actions in the name of Islam. It defends its actions on the basis of Islamic scripture. How can we say it's not an Islamic group?
Kashif, this is an oversimplistic view. Okay, and when anyone claims that he's doing this in the name of Islam, it doesn't mean that he's doing this in the name of the Islam. And that what made me question the Western intervention. Why they are using now. They are happy that ISIS is using the name of Islam because they can push their agenda, their Islamophobic agenda, using ISIS. They say that, look, ISIS is doing this in the name of Islam, and ISIS believe in a certain version of Islam. That's why, in order to outroot ISIS, we have to outroot this particular version of Islam. And this particular version of Islam is nothing but the mainstream Islam that we all believe in.
And do you believe that ISIS's interpretation of Islam is therefore illegitimate and doesn't accord with Islamic views properly?
See, there are certain things that ISIS is doing as just Muslims. See, in order to understand the whole situation, ISIS, what is ISIS? There is the leadership of ISIS, and there are the normal people who joined ISIS out of zeal, out of enthusiasm, out of ignorance, like those hundreds of European people who joined ISIS. Maybe some of them have good intention, but they have ignorance and they don't know the reality. But who is controlling the show?
Well, you've mentioned that you think it's a conglomeration of different or at least it's been initiated by a conglomeration of intelligence agencies. This is
exactly
something quite hard to substantiate.
Yes, exactly. That's why. Okay. Leave that. Who is benefiting from ISIS? This is the question. Who is benefiting from ISIS? Are the Syrian people? Are the Syrian people benefiting from ISIS? In fact, who is benefiting from ISIS?
Clearly not. But also, many others are suffering at the hands of ISIS, including in the West. But
the first people to suffer from ISIS are the moderate Sunni groups that are fighting the regime.
You've said ISIS is illegitimate. Do you find ISIS's views and practices to be extreme?
Let us talk about what kind of practices we are talking about. Otherwise, mixing between the practices, this might create a lot of confusion. For example, ISIS pray 5 times a day. So, shall we say that there is a problem in praying 5 times a day? Obviously not. ISIS claim that they want to stop alcohol. Shall we say that drinking alcohol should not be part of Islam?
So they have some things that concord with normal Muslim practice and normative. What are, in your view, the practices which are illegitimate and extremist?
Yes. And those practices are the practices that are run by the people who run the show in ISIS. For example, The very first thing is to claim that they are on the truth exclusively, and there is no other legitimate group. In fact, they call any other group that does not give bay'ah or a contract of allegiance to them as murtad and as kafir.
What
And
about
this
their
is all
claim
wrong.
to the caliphate? What about
This
Abu
is
Bakr?
this is the second thing, claiming the caliphate.
Why
Yes?
is this? Why is this illegitimate Islamically?
Because, see, in order to claim a caliphate, you need the vast majority of Muslims to support you. You don't
Surely
need.
they have to start. Some people who are taken in by their viewpoint will say they have to start somewhere.
Where did you get this from? This is not true. Where did you get it from? That it has to start somewhere.
So you're saying that it has no. What is this?
That's why.
Is this the mainstream Islamic viewpoint?
Of course. That's why. Look, all
On the basis of what? On what basis do you say it's the
because
mainstream Islamic
what
viewpoint?
does khilafah mean? Khilafah means the representation of the entire ummah. That's why the jihad in many places, the legitimate jihad in many places, whether the jihad that started long time ago in Sudan, in Libya, in Afghanistan, they never claimed caliphate.
Right. Okay. So if we move on, so you've mentioned an exclusive claim to truth.
Yes.
An illegitimate
calling others as kuffar if they
Right,
don't
okay,
give
this is the third
allegiance
point. So
to them. Yes. And claiming caliphate as well.
Right.
Yeah?
Okay. So you've mentioned these as being extreme views, illegitimate, not based on a sound reading of Islamic sources and Islamic authorities. But,
And there is another problem, by the way. Yeah.
Okay.
If there is any
if you could quickly, because I wanted to take up you on that point.
That problem is, see, if there is any group now that is fighting any repressive regime or any dictators or fighting in general, that group, if they do not have a political wing, yes, then that group will achieve nothing in this world. Because this world is not talking about just fighting.
Right,
you can't win just by fighting.
If we can get back to how this is an error in your viewpoint, how is this?
Because
what are they doing which is un-Islamic?
Because it is not just about fighting. If you want to establish a country, you need
But
politics, you need systems.
They have a political agenda.
They have a political agenda, but they don't have a political front. Why? Because they believe that if they have a political front, it means that they have recognized another political entities, and in their view, this is
which
kufr.
comes back to the idea of exclusive claim to truth. If we can sort of challenge, perhaps, or I think a number of people would like to challenge you on this idea that this is a new and deviant and unfounded reading of Islamic practice. It may indeed be so. But there are historical precedents. Actually which you are connected to yourself. You are a Saudi-trained scholar. If one examines Islamic history, within Saudi Arabia, we had 200 years ago the rise of another extremist group, the Wahhabi Movement. The Wahhabi Movement had, as some of its facets and features, the exact points you mentioned about ISIS. They claimed an exclusive hold on the truth, that they alone were the true monotheists, and they engaged in, they engaged in takfir. They engaged in mass excommunication of Muslims. Yeah. So ISIS, by the way, Daesh, draw on and cite these Wahhabi sources.
Yeah. Okay. I left you to speak because I don't want to stop you, but most of what you have said is not founded. Okay, and as a proof for this, the Wahhabi movement never claimed caliphate. Have they claimed caliphate before? No. It is not known.
What about the issue of takfir then?
We'll come to that.
Well, there's if I could press you on the takfir.
Okay, so one by one, do you agree that they did not? Did you agree that
we'll
they did
accept
not,
that for the moment, for the sake of
not
moving
for the
on.
moment. It is a fact.
Okay.
The
Moving on to
second
takfir.
thing, okay, regarding takfir, see, the problem is not of takfir, because do you know that the word kafir and takfir and kufr was mentioned in the Quran? Let me just finish.
Yes.
Was mentioned in the Quran more than 500 times. More than 500 times.
I'm sure.
No,
I'm sure. As an Islamic scholar, you're correct on that. But the point
so the point is not takfir. The point is the consequences of takfir.
Sure. And that is, I think, a point that people would like to hold you up on. It's not just that the Wahhabis, in theory, excommunicated people. In practice, they massacred people on the basis of their takfir. And so ISIS is doing the same as the Wahhabis.
Yeah, that needs to be proven.
Well, if we look at their own Wahhabi sources, if we look at what they said.
No, that is not true. And if you look now,
is that really true?
Yeah, of course. And if you look now,
what if it's substantiated? What if it's substantiated historically? What would your response be if it is substantiated that historically the Wahhabis did commit massacres legitimized by takfir in, for example, Ta'if, in Basra?
No, not at all. There were some fights that sometimes were normal fights and not as you said, as you put it, like massacres. They never done that. And I challenge you, and I challenge anyone to prove that from a historical perspective, from neutral historical.
What if they prove it even from their own, from their own sources?
Let us see it. Let us see it. And that's why. Okay.
So you're open to have a discussion about that. You're open to have a discussion, a second extended discussion about.
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. Even Muḥammad ibn Abdul Wahhab himself. Okay, he said it clearly in the Majmu'ah, the collection. He said, وَلَا نُكَفِّرُ أَحَدًا مِّنْ الْمُسْلِمِينَ بِذَنْبٍ.
I think he says other things as well. So, I mean, you stated, well, this is clearly something that this is a very hot and contentious issue, needs further explanation.
We cannot just pass judgment like this.
So
and let me mention something more. Now, the Saudi government, which is the inheritors of the Wahhabi movement, as they say. Yeah, the Wahhabi movement.
Press you to be quick, Dr.
Okay. Do they do what ISIS is doing? They don't do that.
They don't. But again, I think the argument would be the historic. The argument would be the historic.
No. So
group.
Why? No. Okay. Officially, that's Saudi.
Unfortunately, we have to press you here to wrap up here, Sheikh Haytham. You've made your point about how you don't believe there to be a direct connection. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Haytham Al-Haddad, for coming in and explaining your views so clearly and so eloquently. Jazakallah khair to the viewers for listening today to what was really a fascinating set of insights from Dr. Haytham. A very, as you can imagine, very, very contentious issue, one which has got people engaged in discussion right across the community. Dr. Haytham mentioned how, in his view, the Western campaign is one which is very muddy and very, very questionable. Also, in his article, which you can go back and read on the Face to Face website, has made a number of points about why the West didn't act previously in this way. And finally, he touched on issues about the legitimacy of ISIS and how he doesn't accept the connection between what ISIS is doing now and the historic Wahhabi movement. Maybe that's something that Dr. Haytham can come back and discuss in more depth in future. There will be more episodes. Please follow what happens on the website and read the other interesting articles there for your benefit. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.